Okay, session 626, November the 8th, 1972. Yesterday, Jane and I read the Time magazine cover story for November the 13th, 1972, featuring Richard Bosch and his book Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I read that on my channel. If you care to go to that in my playlist, that's a very good book. We were very pleased for Dick. The article also included information about the Seth material. Let's skip a little. It isn't necessary to go into dates and other details here, but several days before we were told that the Bach story originally scheduled appearance in late October had been postponed. Jane had a vivid dream giving her that literal information. Giving her that literal information. She wrote Dick about it and told others. Her dream was also fairly accurate concerning the magazine's cover painting for the piece, a montage featuring a bird that was somehow a part of a man's head or face, as she described it. Actually, Time's design showed a seagull superimposed over Dick Bosch's head, partially obliterating it. Monday night, Jane had another vivid dream involving the Seth material herself and a certain kind of magazine story. She's written it down, and we'll see how it turns out. Good evening. Good evening, Seth. Dictation. And aside to you, now you see I can speak in time or out of it, underline time. I guess because they came in the magazine called Time. The physically alive body, its activities and condition are directed through the beliefs of the conscious mind. The body, as explained in this chapter, also has invisible counterparts composed of the electromagnetic properties and the interior sound and light qualities. These invisible structures preceded the emergence of the physical body. They also exit after the body's death. While the condition of the body is directed by the conscious mind in life, then the ideal or mental pattern for the body existed before the conscious mind's connection with the physical brain. The genes and chromosomes do not just happen to have within them the precise, definite, coded information that will be needed. The data is impressed upon them from within. The identity exists before the form. You could say that the identity existed in another dimension entirely. Plants the seed into the medium of physical reality from which its own material existence will spring. Therefore, the inner self forms first the invisible body structure, which will later emerge in flesh. At the event of this mental seeding, the conscious mind, in your terms, is obviously not connected with the brain, which has not yet been formed in flesh. The ideal of the body is held and made physical by a conscious mind. Consciousness, then, is not dependent upon physical perception, though this attribute does require an awareness immersed within a material form. While physical consciousness is sifted through the bodily apparatus, you are usually unaware of non-corporeal kinds because of that process. The general framework, properties, and characteristics of the body exist, therefore, before its formation. In simple terms, you choose ahead of time the kind of body you will inhabit and impress. It may seem to you that you do not have any conscious control over your body's condition in life as you know it, much less before your birth. You have been taught that there is little connection between your thought and your body's activities. A man believing he has heart trouble will finally, through his own anxiety, affect the functioning of his involuntary system until his heart is definitely harmed if the belief goes unchecked. The conscious mind directs the so-called involuntary systems of the body, and not the other way around. No idea slips insidiously past your awareness to affect your involuntary system unless it fits in with your own conscious beliefs. Once more, you will not be sick if you think you are well, but there may be other ideas that make you believe in the necessity for poor health. You are not aware of how the body performs its many involuntary functions. The conscious mind could not handle all that data, but those functions perfectly mirror your consciously held ideas and beliefs. As I mentioned, the conscious mind is not basically cut off from the inner self or from those deep inner sources of knowledge available to it. The aware mind is not any one event. For that matter, it represents various portions of the inner self that surface at any given time. Within the basic framework of the body chosen before physical birth, for reasons that will be discussed later, the individual has full freedom to create a perfectly healthy, functioning form. The form is, however, a mirror of beliefs and will accurately materialize in flesh those ideals held by the conscious mind. That is one of the body's primary functions. A sick body is performing that function then in its way as well as a healthy one. It is your most intimate feedback system, changing with your thoughts and experience, giving you in flesh the physical counterpart of your thought. So it is futile to become angry at a symptom or to deride the body for its condition, when it is presenting you with a corporeal replica of your own thought, as it was meant to do. Your environment and your experience in the physical world also provide you with the same kind of feedback. It is just as useless to berate your environment or your experience in it as you deride your body, for the same reasons. It often seems, when such ideas as these are presented, that the ideal results in your terms would be perfection, heaven on earth, a state in which everyone would be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And Ron says, "Now Seth asked me to open a beer for Jane. I don't want to give him a break yet," he added, the him stemming from Jane's male entity name, Rupert. It was obvious that Jane was in a very deep trance. Our house was turning noisy, but she showed no signs whatever of unease. Instead, she sat quietly waiting for me to pick up my notebook. You are, however, in physical existence, using your body as a medium for learning and expression. You are each unique. Many of you, for your own reasons, pursue courses that do not involve an even development of abilities, an overall balanced picture, for example, but choose to express and experiment with certain qualities to the exclusion of others. Such a course would not, in physical reality, present you with anything like a balanced picture of perfection. Later in the book, we will discuss other kinds of existence in which you are also involved, and these to some extent color your intents and purposes in physical life as you now understand it. If all of your beliefs, not just your fortunate ones, were not materialized, you would never thoroughly understand on a physical level that your ideas create reality. If only your positive beliefs were materialized, then you would never clearly comprehend the power of your thought, for you would not completely experience its physical results. The conscious mind exists before material life and after it. In corporeal existence, it is intertwined with the brain, and during physical life, your earthly perceptions. Your precise and steady focus within your particular space and time system are dependent upon that fine alliance. Before physical birth, then, you form a mental concept of the body you will have. This image is impressed into matter in this way. You tune yourself into a highly specific dimension of reality. You form a physical structure that will have existence within that intensely concentrated area, that will have validity and actuality, that will come alive within those frequencies. Now it is here that the seeming division of the self occurs, for in physical life, the conscious mind must be connected with the brain, and in terms of time, that organ itself must grow and develop. So all of your consciousness cannot be physically aware. The portion that must wait for the brain's development is the part you call, in life, the conscious mind. The other portions can be called the inner self. Now, all of this inner self cannot become expressed even with its connections within the brain, since the brain must sift perception through the physical apparatus. You may take your break. Because of the noise distractions in the house, I kept Rupert in trance longer. It is easier that way. Jane's half-hour-long trance had indeed developed into a profound one. Man, have I been out, she said, trying to keep her eyes open. She finally gave up and leaned back in her rocker. Are you tired of writing? I said I wasn't. Well, I guess we'll go on then, she said. She took her glasses off. Seth returned in a few moments. As soon as he did, Jane's eyes came wide open, and her manner grew animated and intense once more. The brain, with its bodily connections, must deal with the time lapses that sensual perception always imply. The interior workings of the body, to be conscious, would have to deal with time sequences that would present the physically attuned consciousness with mathematical deductions and calculations far too numerous for it to handle. For example, it would have to keep conscious track of all the muscles, nerves, organs, cells, molecules, and atoms, while maintaining the body in space and time. Therefore, a seeming division occurs in which a portion of the invisible conscious mind is connected with the brain, the physical brain, and a portion of it is free of that connection. The latter part forms what you think of as the involuntary system of the body. Again, it is important that you realize the initial non-physical reaction to stimuli that sparks off all physical reactions. There is constant interplay and communication between the areas of consciousness that are connected to the brain and those that are not. The deeper purposes of the consciousness involved circulate, sometimes arising in the awareness that is joined with the brain. Information coming from these deeper sources of the self, reaching the areas connected to the brain, will be interpreted according to the beliefs of that most physically focused segment of the self. To some degree, such inner data will be colored by the current beliefs on the part of the self most directly confronting the physical world. Those beliefs, however, are also constantly being examined by the inner self. And now I suggest you end the session. All right, I said in some surprise, but we have a good portion of the material through, so count your blessings. Okay, Chapter 6. The body of your beliefs and the power structures of belief. Over the last few days, Jane has received a number of telephone calls as well as letters from people about the country asking for help from her and or Seth. Some of the problems cited are quite severe, and often they're beyond any reasonable, let alone quick, therapy that Jane, Seth, or I can offer. Because of our own sympathetic reactions, Jane and I often end up feeling frustrated. Also, to help but a few people with any thoroughness means that we'd have no time left for the rest. Apropos of Jane's efforts to personally do what she can, she received a visitor recently who displayed signs of a secondary personality. As we waited for the session tonight, Jane said 2 channels from Seth were open. Seth could speak on the people who have been seeking her out or give book dictation. She chose to continue with the book, saying that it will help numbers of people far beyond anything she can do individually. Good evening. Good evening, Seth. Dictation, Chapter 6, The Body of Your Beliefs and the Power Structures of Beliefs. This is the heading. Quite literally, you live in the body of your beliefs. You perceive through the body of your beliefs. Your beliefs can increase your vision or diminish it. They can increase or diminish your hearing or any sense function. If, for example, you believe that after a certain time of life, hearing will fade, then so it will. You will begin to use the faculties less and less, unconsciously transfer your attention to the other senses to compensate, and rely less and less upon your ears until the functions themselves do atrophy. Period. Functions in this particular regard are habits. You simply forgot how to hear properly, following your belief. All of the minute manipulations necessary to hearing are unconsciously repressed. The actual physical deterioration, then, does indeed follow. The deterioration, however, does not occur first, but after. The same kind of development can occur in almost any physical category. Usually, more than one belief is involved. Parallel with the belief that vision will fail, you may have the before-mentioned belief that hearing will dim, and these 2 ideas may be reinforced by a belief that age automatically makes you less a person, turning you into an individual who can no longer relate in the daily pattern of environment. The belief, you see, would work to ensure the materialization of that state. On the other hand, you may believe that wisdom grows with age, that self-understanding brings a peace of mind not earlier known, that the keen mind is actually far better able to assess the environment, and that the physical senses are much more appreciative of all stimuli. And so those conditions will be physically met in your experience. The physical apparatus itself, following your beliefs, will continue in health. You must understand again that your ideas and thoughts do not exist as phantoms or shadow images without substance. They are electromagnetic realities. They affect your physical being, and they are automatically translated by your nervous system into the stuff of your flesh and of your experience. Your conscious mind is meant to assess and evaluate physical reality, and to help you chart your course in the corporeal universe of which you are presently part. Other portions of your being, as mentioned, rely upon you to do this. All energy at the inner self's disposal is then concentrated to bring about the results asked for by the conscious mind. Your effective power of action follows the lines of your belief. To believe in your own weakness is to deny yourself the power of action. To accept uncritically all beliefs that come to you is to open yourself to a barrage of conflicting data at best, in which the clear lines of action and power become blurred. Contradictory demands and assessments are then sent in to the inner self, which by various methods will try to tell you that something is wrong. Beliefs of like nature attract each other, for you are bound to look for consistencies in your behavior and experience. You must learn to deal with your own beliefs directly, or you will be forced to deal with them indirectly, by reacting to them quite without knowing it in your physical experience. When you rail against an unfavorable environment, or a situation or condition, basically, and underline the following phrase, you are not acting independently, but almost blindly reacting. You are reacting to events that seem to happen to you, and always in response to a situation. To act in an independent manner, you must begin to initiate action that you want to occur physically by creating it in your own being. This is done by combining belief, emotion, and imagination, and forming them into a mental picture of the desired physical result. Of course, the wanted result is not yet physical, or you would not need to create it. So it does no good to say that your physical experience seems to contradict what you are trying to do. Because ideas and beliefs have this electromagnetic reality, then constant interplay between those strongly contradicting beliefs can cause great power blocks, impeding the flow of inner energy outward. At times, a polarization can occur. Unassimilated beliefs, unexamined ideas, can seem to adopt a life of their own. These can effectively dominate certain areas of activity. You may take your break. Now, dictation. Not long ago, Rupert was presented with a demonstration embodying the nature and power of beliefs. He received a phone call from a man who lived in another state. There was a request for an interview. Without knowing why, Rupert felt an impulse to see the man and set up an appointment. The visitor arrived from the airport with his wife in tow. He was a study, a living example of the effects of conflicting, unexamined beliefs, a fierce and yet agonized personification of what can happen when an individual allows his conscious mind to deny its responsibilities, when an individual becomes afraid of his own consciousness. Here was a young man whose beliefs were alive with their own life, while he was relatively powerless. No effort had been made to reconcile directly opposing beliefs, until the personality itself was quite literally polarized. You were faced with what could be called a classic instance of secondary personality. I am discussing it here because it so beautifully illustrates the nature and power of beliefs and the conflicts that can arise when an individual does not accept responsibility for his own thoughts. This is not a usual case, but to some extent or another, such a division occurs physically or mentally when the contents of the conscious mind are not examined. Entering, the man bristled with belligerence and hostility. Having requested help, he then hated himself for the weakness that he believed caused such a need. He glowered at our friend Rupert with great vehemence, projecting all of the energy at his command to show that he would not be cowed, and that if anyone took over the situation, he would be the one to do so. He spoke of another personality far more powerful than he, though he said he could face a room full of 150 people to follow his commands. No, he said he could force a room full of 150 people to follow his commands. The other personality, however, originated in another galaxy and came as a friend to help and protect him. At his behest, he said, this invisible friend killed a lawyer. A lawyer not only did not understand the condition, killed a lawyer. The lawyer not only did not understand the condition, according to the story, but hurt the feelings of the man under discussion. We will call the man Augustus. Take a break for Rupert. Okay, I'll go where it starts up again. In Monday's session, Seth had started a discussion of Jane's recent visitor, Augustus, who had shown definite signs of a subordinate or secondary personality. As we set for tonight's session, Jane said, "I know what Seth is going to call Augustus' other personality, Augustus 2. We were amused, thinking of Seth and Seth 2. Now Jane began speaking slowly in trance. Good evening. And we will resume dictation. To begin with, Augustus was brought up to believe that the inner self was dangerous, that individuals reacting because of inner conflicts over which they had little conscious control. He believed that the individual personality was relatively powerless to understand itself, and that it stood precariously alone and undefended, with a chasm of evil beneath and with an unattainable, cold, just, but not compassionate good above. He felt bewildered in a world of opposites. Conflicting beliefs were uncritically accepted. The conscious mind will always attempt to make sense out of its beliefs, to form them into patterns and sequences. It will usually organize ideas in as rational a way as possible, and dispense with those that seem to contradict the overall system of its beliefs. Augustus had been taught to fear his own thoughts, to avoid self-examination. Beliefs or ideas that frightened him were not faced, therefore, but initially shoved into corners of the conscious mind, where they lay relatively harmlessly in the beginning. As time went on, the number of unexamined, frightened beliefs began to accumulate. Ideas and beliefs do feed upon themselves. There is within them a built-in impetus toward growth, development, and fulfillment. Over the years, two opposing systems of belief built up strongly vying for Augustus's attention. He believed that he was utterly powerless as an individual, that despite all his efforts he would come to nothing, go unnoticed. He felt completely unloved. He did not feel worthy of love. At the same time, he let his conscious mind wander, and to compensate saw himself as all-powerful, contemptuous of his fellow human beings, and able to work greater vengeance upon them for their misunderstanding of him. In this line of beliefs he was able to do anything, cure mankind's ills if he chose, or withhold such knowledge from the world to punish it, period. Now all of these ideas were quite conscious, but he held each group separately. The conscious mind again tries to obtain overall integrity and unity, lining up its beliefs into some kind of consistent system. When opposing beliefs that directly contradict each other are held for any length of time, and little attempt is made to reconcile them, then a battle begins within the conscious mind itself. Since it is the beliefs of the conscious mind that regulate the involuntary bodily motions and the entire physical system, then contradictory beliefs obviously set up adverse physical reactions and imbalances. I see my little battery is showing that it's going to go off anytime, so I will end this one right here and start with this right in the middle of this in the next session.